get it on. This is going to be such a fun day. Let's get it on. Like I just said before. Damn, that's twice. In the top right side, we're looking at the main base of our Ukrainian Protoss player with his awesome PvP style. It is Hellraiser.
In the bottom left, playing for Cascade Esports, he is the red Protoss, GunGFuBanDa.
You know, Jess, I do always have a little bit of fear when we are looking forward to a PvP, and we know that it can be awesome because Hellraiser has shown us some fantastic PvP games already this season. But PvP is still pretty volatile in the early game, right? Like, we are still going to get a couple 6-7 minute games probably with some proxy stargates, gateway pressure, batteries getting sniped. I just hope that it's not like that for the entire best of 5.
There's no denying that it can still happen, but I feel like so much more often, especially what we've seen in Europe, like it is maybe an opening Stargate, right, but it doesn't really end the game. And then mostly just even a surprising amount sometimes of passive play in the mid game where I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure he has, he knows he has faster blink, he knows he has faster +1. Is he going to try and use it? And then they actually just continue going on 4 and 5 bases. And that was extra special about Hellraiser. It's early in the morning. I'm still waking up here. It was extra special about Hellraiser was that not only did he we remember the latter half of the games where he's bouncing around bases and doing everything at once. But the actual start of a lot of his games, he was almost, he wanted to make sure it looked like that he was on 4 bases, in fact, before he really started to charge up and attack his opponent.
Yep. I mean, we casted, it was Katz and me early this season when Hellraiser played a game, or was it Skillers actually, against DNS. And it was very similar to everything that Hellraiser does. And those two are obviously great friends. They always hang out with each other at events. And I was like, yeah, there's a good chance we'll see this stuff coming out of Skillers. But then Hellraiser says, hold my beer, but anything Skillers can do, I can do as well. We came up with this together. And it's really fun. But like I said before, I've tried similar stuff in the past against GunGfu. Obviously, GunGfu is much better than me, and Hellraiser is much better than me. So my own experience is not perhaps that valuable. But I really like the approach that GunGfu had back then. Sentries are great against units that cannot break force fields. And then if you still have Blink Stalkers, you don't have to worry too much about having a super immobile army. And on top of that, I think GunGfu in general is pretty alright with just sitting at home, right? He's quite a macro-oriented player, especially in this matchup as well.
Yeah, I think so. I would consider him one. I mean, a lot of his, grueling qualifiers are through a lot of other Protoss players. That's just where Europe is at right now. And for a little while, it didn't look like GunGfu was going to be able to break through compared to the rest. So many new names, to let people who don't, I guess, haven't been actively watching StarCraft this year. They're not super new, but kind of new. And he's finally done it. And it seems like he really has gotten a handle on not just the actual matchup, but then also I think his mentality as well. GunGfu does place down a pylon kind of an odd time. What do you think that's for?
Could maybe go for the random adepts a little bit later if Hellraiser decides to be aggressive with his Blink Stalkers, or GunGfu wants to get quick Blink, or he goes for a Dark Shrine. I feel like there's a lot of options, right? But it is always nice, I think, to have a pylon out on the map. And that is not a pylon that I think is going to get scouted anytime soon. Because normally, Hellraiser shouldn't go there. Especially not because he made a couple sentries early on. And why the hell would you ever want to send your sentries out that far?
Yeah, that's a little bit dangerous. I think you're right about the Adept call. I mean, if this probe was still there, I'd be totally on board with the Dark Shrine. But he left it. So it did just seem to be... I mean, maybe also a little bit of scouting for the future as well. But... you're not going to really have war prisms this early on. In fact, that's exactly what you really don't want if you want to go into a macro game as PvP. Robos coming down fast are actually just totally not in style. You want to get Twilight Council, you want to get Blink and +1, which is what they're both doing. And they're also both getting scouting on that information too. So, I mean, it does kind of just show to each of them that's going to go into that macro game.
Yep. Yeah, they're just kind of relying on the sentries. I always feel it's a bit risky to play like this. Because it's like, what if there was actually a Dark Shrine out there? And you can often put 2 and 2 together and realize that there is a Dark Shrine on the way, because obviously they do get a lot of information out of their sentries. I still think it's always a little bit risky, because what if you just, what if they only made 1 sentry and then they just kind of caught out on a stalker? You don't always know where all their stalkers are. What if they start up with Charge instead of Blink, which costs a little bit less gas? There is a chance. It's not very likely, But I do feel like you always have to be a bit wary of there being potentially a Doctor.
I agree. I mean, that's also why the hallucinations are coming in so frequently, though. I mean, they're not just checking for like continued pro production, you know, the Twilight Council and the Forge actually still researching as opposed to a cancel coming down at some point. But they're also checking the army compositions when possible. You know, they want to go over the army because then the hallucination dies. So you can kind of check in and see like, okay, what is being built? Because if it's a bunch of charge slots, you're going to be like, oh, they're getting charged. They're not getting, and I need to worry about that. And you also want to check for the third Nexus timing, which they're both really going to match each other. I mean, we finally have a slight difference in the build orders, which is that Hellraiser went for a bit of a faster robo and is chronoing out an Immortal, whereas GunGfu really did delay his a lot and is a bit faster to charge.
That actually surprised me, because an Immortal is obviously a unit that slows down your army, right? So if Hellraiser wanted to rely on his gateway units, then you don't normally make an Immortal early on because you're confident enough that you're never going to be in trouble. Like, what is going to happen if he makes gateway units and you make gateway units? You're always going to be safe at home. So it seems that Hellraiser is maybe going for a slightly more passive approach here. And maybe GunGfu is going to be the first one to actually make like a Warp Prism and then try to go for maybe an attack at the third while warping in some units in the main.
Yeah, I think we're both paying pretty close attention to any discrepancy that says, oh, someone is going to attack. I mean, even if they're getting charge and +2, if there was a Warp Prism, it'd be like a little bit like, oh, okay, maybe something can happen. But really, it is all just about scouting. A little bit of extra gas coming down for GunGfu. I can't say I'm terribly surprised that Hellraiser has done this, or that both of them have. Like, as I was saying in the earlier portion of this game, like, it just seems to be the way that a lot of European PvPs go. But then I was also I made sure to talk about how Hellraiser seemed like he really wants to get to 3 base saturation, if not 4 bases, before he goes into the aggressive mode. So that sometimes we'll include an Immortal, I guess, just as safety, actually. Because you're right, like, it's going to be hard to get that across the map and use it the way that we expect Hellraiser to use his army. But it's actually going to add a robotics base, so not the style I think that we were hyping up in the pre-show.
Now, maybe it's a map thing. Maybe he just feels that on this map he can't properly run around like he can on some of the other maps. But I gotta say, at this point, I'm really feeling GunGfu's position. I like his tech choices a bit more. His scouting has obviously been on point. He's getting the Warp Prism now. Hellraiser is also getting a Prism, but that's not to be aggressive. I think that's just to be annoying and keep GunGfu at home. But if GunGfu just hits a very powerful attack with, let's say, 3 Archons, how is Hellraiser gonna stop that? Like, I don't really care how many Zealots you have. If you have no Archons and your opponent has 3 Archons, that's going to be so difficult unless there is like 5, 6, 7 shield batteries for your Stalkers to fall back to. But I actually think that Hellraiser is just doing a few too many things at once, and I'm not sure if he can get away with this, because if I'm GunGfu, I'm moving out like right now.
Agreed. This is one of those things that's popping back into PvP, it feels like, where they're like, oh, we can still break a guy who's going into Blink and trying to get up to Disruptors with that charge Archon composition, not actually so much on the Immortals. But yeah, if the Disruptor count is low, I mean, we're talking about 1, 2, maybe even 3, like just mass amount of charge lots and a couple of Archons added in, especially to a guy who's like backed into his own corner, can't really Blink micro very much, it's still going to be an effective attack. So GunGfu is finally moving out. He does prepare for the follow-up. Got his own second Robo, Robotics Bay, a Dark Shrine, but check around for the Warp Prism first. I don't think he would do that with the entire army unless you're really going to move out. Okay, there he goes. It's going to move out. His Warp Prism is on the right side, prepared to start, I guess, the attack with the drop. Or, well, Hellraiser finds it.
Yeah, Hellraiser has to be careful because he just blinked forward on top of a pylon. And I was like, maybe this is the moment GunGfu can go for it. Hellraiser is paying attention to his minimap, immediately warps in 7 units. Now, GunGfu could potentially bring the Prism with his main army, but I already feel like he kind of missed the window now, right? Like, he could have gone earlier when there were either 0 or maybe at best 1 disrupted. Now there is 2 and the third one is on the way. So I guess we're just going to have a much longer game. But then, obviously, I'm starting to favor Hellraiser, right? If GunGfu doesn't commit, like, Archons are great, but I'd rather have Disruptors, like 4 or 5 of them, than having a couple of Archons. So I'm really curious to see where GunGfu feels like he can start creating a little advantage. Seems like he still wants to go for some aggression. Has to be so careful with his Warp Prism. GunGfu, what are we doing with the Prism?
A little bit questionable there. If he really wants to commit to an attack, he wants the reinforcements. That is an easy pick-off for Hellraiser, but it looks like GunGfu may be just trying to distract his opponent and find an opening elsewhere. Tried a couple Zealots across the map on the left side, but appropriate defenses are already saturated at the 4th base. And that is yeah, confirmation, I guess, that we're going to be going into the late game. It is Disruptor, Blink with those DTs. We're going to see the Immortals, the Sentries, the Archons. They're all going to get blown to pieces eventually. And it'll be just about that micro, which, Hellraiser, funnily enough, like, I didn't actually get to see a lot of his specifically Disruptor Blink micro because he was playing that Mass Gateway style. So I'm interested to see if he's going to be the better one with it.
I think he's very good with it. I don't know if he's like necessarily better than GunGfu, but I would normally say like, yeah, kind of like Hellraiser, his chances in a Disruptor war. These armies are getting close to each other. Like, I still don't really know what GunGfu was just doing there on the other side of the map. Like, I can't even really call that an attack, right? That was a donation. It's like, here I have 9 Zealots and a War Prison. I'm gonna go back home again. The only thing he can sort of say that he achieved is that he bought time for his own Disrupt account to actually start getting back up to the numbers that Hellraiser already had.
And I think that is something that it is important that he was able to do that. He also temporarily had an upgrade lead, although, oh my god, it's so much more important to keep your Disruptors alive. So that's not so great. Another good shot there for Hellraiser, as well as a big run by. There's a cannon available for detection, so that's not going to provide any opportunities. But Hellraiser has taken a pretty strong lead in that army. Disruptors, especially defensively set up, aren't going to die anytime soon.
I mean, just take a look at the units lost resource step up to this point. 4.4k against 1400 in a game that has been so passive, where both players basically had all the time in the world to just macro up and do whatever the hell they want. GunGfu has really taken some awful trades up to this point. Now in PvP, that's not the end of the world, because 2 or 3 good Novas or maybe 1 good fight with your DTs and Zealots, and everything is still possible, as he does pick up 1 Nova there, or 1 Disruptor there, but I gotta say, this is a very rocky start for GunGfu, to say the least.
Both of them have observers, but stack defense still going in favor of GunGfu. I love how much Hellraiser is really trying to push this issue. He really, not just wants to start hitting it with the actual units we see, but ideally also open up a pathway on the right side. But GunGfu is not letting it happen. Now, GunGfu did add on a Stargate. And I think, when he lost a couple of Disruptors, was losing those resources you just pointed out, maybe it was a little sketch to go into a Fleet Beacon. But now that he seems to have really secured his 4 bases going into a 5th, I do like seeing he's getting into a Fleet Beacon.
Just look at the minimap and how Hellraiser is starting to take control of this game. I'm really enjoying the army movement. He still has to be careful going up a ramp, but Hellraiser actually finding himself in a really nice position there, where it makes it very hard for GunGfu to get on top of the Stalkers, even though that is a juicy Nova, and another Nova was going towards the Disruptors. This was kind of expensive by Hellraiser. We know that he's rich, we know that he likes to build a lot of probes, but he did just kind of donate his entire army.
Yeah, a little bit questionable. His own Nova's not really getting the powerful connections he was looking for on the top side. The rest of his Blink Stalkers getting destroyed, which means that GunGfu can then chase down the Disruptors that are now trying to escape, or maybe not even have to. The Disruptors are already doing the job for him. Hellraiser, a very costly mistake, I think. He's going to be losing that extra base, I believe. There's a decent amount of static defense, but he's now at 2 Disruptors. Second one's about to pop out. No, that was literally the first one. 1 Disruptor to 8.
If you guys just joined us, these are the playoffs, and this is the lower bracket of the playoffs, so there's no more room for errors. It's not the same as in the group stage where you've got 7 best of 3s and you can drop 1. I think this is do or die, obviously, for both players, and I feel like we're starting to see some nerves on both sides, because this game has been a bit of a clown fiesta at this point, where Hellraiser gets the best rates ever, and then all of a sudden he's like, let's donate an army that's worth like 10k resources, and GunGfu's like, alright man, that's super cool. That's exactly what I needed to get completely back in this game. But yeah, I think playoffs, tournament live on the line. I think it's only normal that we're going to see a couple of silly mistakes from these players.
I feel like there's also a little bit of just like kind of wanting something to happen, especially because Hellraiser is not the guy that is going to sit back and go to a Stargate and a Fleet Beacon. We haven't really seen that from him in his previous PvPs. And despite having the map in this one, yeah, he didn't do it. Now he can't really maybe afford to do it. He has quite a big of a bank, but it looks like he's waiting to, maybe gateway cooldowns. So yeah, it's maybe that affected his decision to move in. Maybe he really thought he'd get the upper hand with his positioning, but it was quite the risky move and not pay off. I'm surprised this base hasn't died yet, but it seems like it's finally going to go down. Hellraiser completely out of position anyways, kind of forcing a bit of a base trade. There's so much stack defense on this fort, though.
I mean, that's
going to be worth it.
That is one way to get ready for Hellraiser his red style, right? It's like, if you know that he's just going to base trade you all the time, just buy time with cannons, with shield batteries, and pick off a base on the other side of the map, and then just go home. I'm waiting for a moment where I'm like, all right, Hellraiser, I think this is the right play to make. He's just going to avoid his army. Maybe he just feels because GunGFu just recalled, he can now actually try his luck again. There are so many disruptors. Oh, that's a great shot, I think, for GunGFu. Well done. Picks off 2 of the disruptors of Hellraiser. If Hellraiser is forced to fight Jess, I think he's in serious trouble.
Yeah, he really needs more disruptors, but he only ever got 1 robo. He really was never planning on truly going into disruptors. He wanted to play more around the gateway, which he could have done had he not thrown away so much army in that attack. Another base raid it is. There's a lot of stack defense on both sides, but a little less for Hellraiser. It looks like as he could lose 2, maybe even 3 bases while he struggles to take down this one. Mass charge lots warping in to defend. Hellraiser going to blink forward anyways, aggressively. He knows that recall's still on cooldown, so he's hoping to grab something, but it's taken him a lot longer than Hellraiser, who just got 2 Nexus.
Yep, I'm loving the SimCity of these static defenses as well that GunGFu is going for. GunGFu even has a mothership showing up. I mean, that's not going to be super useful because there is an observer, but I do still like the idea of potentially hiding your Nexus for a little while. The Disruptors and Stalkers are running into each other. I have no idea what's happening, but it seems like a lot of Stalkers will get blown up in the end. Yeah, Hellraiser is rich, but he just lost so many bases that I still think I'm okay with that trade for GunGFu, even though that probably shouldn't have happened.
That was very odd. That was like 8 disruptors. Usually stalkers running into that would be a no contest, but I guess a decent focus fire. A couple of last minute splits made it an okay fight, made it still an even supply. But yeah, at the end, Hellraiser having a bit of a bank. He also lost 2 Nexus for just the 1. Both of them still on a pretty healthy probe count. And in fact, Hellraiser about to lose another base off to the right side, not prepared to defend it at all. Just once again moves the other direction.
A couple of Dark Templars are just casually running into the army of GunGFu, and they will just go down as well. So Hellraiser is starting to lose more and more expensive units. He's going to try his luck one more time with the base trade. There aren't too many static defenses left, but there is another recall available, and that's going to keep this base safe for GunGFu for now. And look at the army as well coming in from the right side on the minimap. These Stalkers, yeah, they indeed need to evacuate towards the top left. Still a couple of leftover Zealots that just took out that Nexus, that survived with like 10 HP. I kind of feel like we are starting to witness the beginning of the end of this game. Unless Hellraiser can just pull off a miracle and can keep running around, but I feel like he's starting to run out of steam in the near future.
I agree with that. I mean, he's got some better upgrades. I just checked on that. So whenever we do see a Stalker fight, I guess it's worth considering, but it's not so much about the direct Stalker fight. I mean, the army of GunGFu is actually... it's got depth here. It's got a mothership. It's got even a couple of Guardian Shield, Force Field, lots of charge lots, disruptors, of course, for Hellraiser. Actually managed to catch up. He's been using them rather defensively. It's not like he's bringing them with his army.
Look at that base in the bottom right for GunGFu. That really feels like Fort Knox. GunGFu is like, you're not getting that one. A million cannons, Stalkers, DTs left behind as well. And Hellraiser is like, you're right, but perhaps I can actually just make some magic happen in the natural. Get on top of your production, but even there we've got the most random cannons, the most random battery, but it just makes sense against the way that Hellraiser is playing. Now obviously GunGFu needs to make sure that he does have enough units to take care of all of this, but I think if he just falls back to his cannons, he should be fine.
Yeah, it's actually on a terrible trade here, but it isn't really going to grab the natural, I think, as much as Hellraiser would want. He made sure to bring an observer here, which has really helped him continue to do damage despite GunGFu trying to hold on. But yeah, didn't get the Nexus, didn't actually get the Robos, although they are depowered, and still has that army looming across the map, but actually chasing after. It's a very bold move, perhaps thinking that GunGFu wasn't paying attention, really wanted the mothership, didn't get anywhere close to grabbing it.
I mean, Hellraiser really is fun to watch, because on one end you're like, I don't see how he wins this game, and on the other end you're like, well, maybe, you know, if he can just drive his opponent completely nuts. It is very easy to make a mistake against somebody that's running around 24/7 with an army. Eventually you either leave too much at home or not enough at home. So there is always some hope for the Ukrainian, even though he's working with the inferior army at this point, setting up a little disruptive flank as well for the main army. Oh my goodness, what a shot. Sorry, Observer, I know you didn't miss it, but one Nova actually just blew up like 2 disruptors and 3-4 Stalkers, so very well done there by Hellraiser.
Hellraiser starting to take a bit of a lead in the supply, but it is really hard to call. Right side not going so hot for Hellraiser, plus he has so many units on the other side of the map. GunGFu is still ultimately thinning out too much, I think, to continue the aggression. Maybe he gets the Nexus and taps out, but it's becoming real maybe as the rest of the army comes forward. It's looking after the mothership. It's looking after perhaps that lone disruptor. Wants to take it out. Bit of a concave coming in here, and actually the aggressive blink forward. The disruptor shot is not going to hit it. Was target fire down. The second disruptor is actually on Hellraiser's side, and that is going to help cement the victory right there.
Hellraiser is so sick. I don't really know how he managed to get all of that done. But all of a sudden, he won 2 fights. Kind of won the fight on the left side. And he did great at home without too many units, but just landing 1 or 2 Novas. Really thinned out that main army of GunGfu. Then Hellraiser is like, all right, I've got like 30 Stalkers. Let's go for it. He fully sent it. And all of a sudden, he's the one who's taking a pretty big lead in this game.
I really feel like Hellraiser's the type of guy that you just like, you sit there and you go, you're not gonna do it. No. And then you do it and you're like, you're actually a little bit delayed. You know, for instance, that mothership, he's probably like, you're not gonna snipe it. And as such, his disruptor really wasn't prepared to shoot. If the shot maybe, you know, a half second faster, probably would have taken out maybe 6 or 7 Stalkers. Not enough to actually even up the score though. I mean, at the end of that fight, Hellraiser was up 50 supply, still carrying at 40. It's looking good for Hellraiser now, really good.
Yep, and it's amazing how he just always keeps expanding, right? Like, it's easy to expand a lot if you're not under any pressure, but it feels that Hellraiser was under a lot of pressure in this game. But he's so damn good in rebuilding those Nexi over and over again, no matter how many he loses. And the fact that GunGfu lost that third a little while ago, I feel like that's really starting to hurt him. Because even the bottom right side is starting to run a little bit low on minerals. Now, GunGfu is going to strike back with a couple of DTs on the top left side. Gets 7 probes, but... well, Hellraiser has lost 71 probes up to this point, and he still has a pretty decent economy.
I'm not sure if you could recall those ones out. Big distraction, though, maybe on the right side. Stalker's interacting with a couple of Zealots. It's going to take longer to kill this than he would have liked. Going to kill his own Stalker, kind of awkwardly there. But it's going to take out the Warp Prism. He's got Observers, so this DT will not save the day, and Hellraiser actually looks like he's just going to give up the base. Once again, moving wherever his opponent's not, and I guess GunGfu is like, okay, where's your army? But I think you gotta take on the Nexus while you still can, man, and then recall.
Hellraiser has now lost 7 Nexi, but he still has more bases than GunGfu. That's just such a bizarre statistic. Hellraiser gonna try his luck one more time with this base. There are a couple cannons, there are a couple batteries, but they get unpowered actually, and that's gonna trigger these Stalkers to go forward. That Nova could have been a lot better, I think. It was alright, but I feel like there was potential for a real money shot. But this Nexus, I think, is going to go down as well. Snipes all the Observers there. Great job by Hellraiser. He can leave his DTs behind.
Yeah, he can. He's going to deal with these ones first, and that might just give GunGfu time to rebuild the Observers, which he was very quick about. It looks like he knew that was going to happen. So the DT is buying him at least a little bit of time. I mean, he bridged the gap a little bit in the supply and barely managed to hold on to a third base, which despite being so low on minerals is still pretty important, but that might be a very temporary thing. GunGfu has to defend again from Hellraiser, who could actually just tap it and then try and blink out before he gets truly punished. But Hellraiser, I guess, doesn't feel like he has to take that risk.
I almost wish that if GunGfu makes a mothership, which he is doing for the second time, why doesn't he just leave it at home for like the double recall? Because it's pretty obvious that against Hellraiser, 1 recall every couple minutes is not enough. I don't really like him bringing his mothership out on the map.
I guess it's just not one of those things you really think about. The mothership comes with. She provides cloaking and a big target on her back, and I guess occasionally a time warp. But I think you're right. I think it would have been better. But we'll see if maybe he wises up to it, start to kind of think about it. It has calmed down a little bit from the hectic base trade after base trade after base trade. But that doesn't bode too well for GunGfu. Just is really starting to run on minerals. I mean, you can't really sneak a base on this map either. It's very easy to scout where your opponent's taking bases. But if GunGfu could get the right side, it would be fantastic. There's already an army waiting.
Yep. I like that GunGfu is like 4 Observers. Blink away, and he does blink away. Hellraiser double expanding during all of this. There is an Observer on the top left side, so at this point GunGfu does know that Hellraiser is taking that base once again. And he's probably aware of the fact that Hellraiser indeed is taking the base on the right side as well. He's got a random Dark Templar slicing away at some probes. I feel like GunGfu is closing in on, I want to say 100 worker kills. 86, yes, he's getting there.
Yeah, I think he's going to get there, man. This game is certainly not over yet. It looked actually super promising for Hellraiser with the supplies, but it's a little bit closer now. And if GunGfu could get another base up, I'd feel a lot more confident for him. He's going to try and get that right side, but I mean, nothing's really guaranteed against Hellraiser. Oh, not even canceled.
That's a bit sloppy because GunGfu is obviously not that rich anymore. I mean, both players not having the sickest income, but Hellraiser has been doing a better job at re-expanding. It's to lose 400 minerals like that when you're only earning like 1,000 to 1,100 minerals a minute. That's a pretty painful mistake. And I mean, GunGFu is going to send his entire army to the other side of the map, but we already know what's going to happen. Hellraiser is like, cool, that means I can finally attack you, right?
Yeah, for some other Protosses, you're like, is he going to go for the base trade? But for Hellraiser, it's like, yes, he's always going to drag you back to your hometown. And GunGFu is going to respond. I don't think he's going to be able to save the Nexus. All it requires is a bit of a tap, but maybe Hellraiser has to focus on bigger things, actually. The Disruptor is not getting a shot, but then the Stalkers of GunGFu actually jumping on top of Hellraiser. Still not good enough, apparently. Hellraiser now leading by 60 supply, is going to run away. He still killed some probes, and now GunGFu only at sub 30 probes. I mean, he never got any other base up, so it is really important. He still has the one to the left, but that's like one of his last money bases.
Yep, indeed. He's going to try to take the bottom right once again, and or like center right. And that is a base that he should be able to defend, but that's so far away from his main that I feel like we already know what's going to happen, right? Hellraiser is going to run into the natural. Well, first pick off that base that he already could have killed with the previous attack, but somehow left it with like 20 HP. This time it is really going to fall, but if GunGFu is really going to turtle at the center right to get that one base up and running, he's going to lose all of his production, and he really doesn't have the resources to rebuild all of that.
Natural has a couple of important production facilities, some decent stack defense, but yeah, the Natural falls in the main. That's where all of his production is, and also some production that he kind of wishes he could have gotten to. 3 Stargates, not really playing a part in this game, just so focused on gateway units. Another attack perhaps on the left side as Hellraiser takes a very bold base, or actually GunGFu's trying to take it as well. That confused me for a second. But the fight's underway, and who's going to win this one? Disruptor count fairly even, but the first shot goes to Hellraiser, and GunGFu is working at a 40 supply deficit.
Yeah, it really does feel that GunGFu, whenever he loses units now, he's going to have a harder and harder time to actually rebuild them. Picking up this base is nice. What I don't get is why wouldn't you stick around that extra second and then actually just kill all of those probes as well? Instead, he's going to run back, lands a good Nova there, but he's going to end up losing a couple of his own units as well. Seems like Hellraiser is confident enough that he can take this fight. That is a very adventurous forward blink, but there are no disruptors left, so it's actually totally fine, and it seems that Hellraiser has done it. He's just got too much.
I think so. I mean, a pretty desperate recall to save some of the army, but then so much of it still went down, and now it's 44 army supply to 111. Hellraiser doesn't have a ton of static defense, I guess, you know, but it doesn't matter. He's just going to tap out, takes a second to get the lay of the land, says, yeah, I guess that's it. And the first game is going to go to Hellraiser, despite a few points where it seemed like it was all GunGFu.
Isn't it funny? Like, if somebody would ask Hellraiser, how did game 1 go? He's like, well, I lost 121 probes, 9 Nexus, but I still won. It's like, okay, what happened? It's like, just the usual. Ran around with a couple gateway units and made stuff happen. Pretty bizarre game where it felt that, I mean, like, I always go back to the basics. I felt that GunGFu had a window, just like a proper window, a 2, maybe 3 Archon attack with a War Prism, and I think his army is more powerful there. Even if you have to fight in range of like 1 battery, I actually think he could have done that. All right, moving on. Then a little bit later, he makes some sort of an attack, which wasn't even an attack. It was just a donation. It's like, have 5 Zealots here, have a Prism and 4 Zealots here, and I'll go home again. And then we had that bizarre exchange in the bottom where I like the idea of Hellraiser because Disruptors are great zoning units, right? But he didn't have that many. He had like 3, so it was like Nova, Nova, Nova. It's like, now 25 Stalkers are stuck, aren't they? It's like, yeah, kind of. And from that point on, I don't even know what happened anymore in that game. It just went bananas.
But I think it's all coming down to, I feel like I know what the defending Protoss player is like feeling, you know, and I'm never going to be as good as these guys, but I got to imagine that every time it's like, well, Hellraiser won't do this, right? Because it just doesn't seem like the right thing to do. He's not going to blink all of Stalkers into my third. He's not going to blink after my mothership. He's not going to go for a base trade. And yet that's exactly what he does. I mean, even down to his aggressive expansions, right? Like in PvP, once you're both set up on 4 bases, you know, there's so many examples of PvP where it's like 20 Zealots, 10 DTs as an army that's going around to harass bases. So even that is like, well, no, he's not going to take 2 Nexus, 3 Nexus. Like, he can't expand that much in this matchup. And that's exactly what Hellraiser does. Whenever he loses one, he just takes another one anyways. Truly a unique take, as PvP has been unique for some time in very different ways over the course of the last few years, but it still continues to be pushed by this young man in the bottom left of Oxide. He is the blue Protoss, Hellraiser.
And in the top right side of Oxide, we're looking in the main base of the man who's made out of raw German steel and twisted sex appeal, GunGFuBanDa.
How long ago did that start?
I don't know, but I did it a couple of times, and then he gave me a really awkward reaction. He's like, "Oh, I don't know, that's so weird," and I'm like, "No, I'm definitely gonna keep doing it."
That's stuck. Yeah. I feel like you say it without having GunGFu on the screen, and people just assume you're going to talk about Showtime.
Well, that's what I should be doing, but GunGFu used to hit the gym pretty frequently, so he's kind of big as well.
Okay. Okay. Well, getting some personal information here. Great stuff. GunGFu gonna go for a scout a bit earlier than what Hellraiser has done, but I guess it is going to be just scout to a scout. Maybe down the line we'll see an experiment, with those faster Nexus, and Oxide even has been a map for that, but they both just want to open up simply 2 gateways.
I think it's fun to go over a little bit of history. Like GunGFuBanDa qualified for the first season of the DreamHack Masters this year, did not qualify for fall, and in summer he was eliminated in the group. So this is the very first time that GunGFu is in the playoffs. Hellraiser qualified all 3 seasons and did make it into the playoffs once, but back then he lost to his good buddy Skillers in the first round of the lower bracket. So whoever wins here, it is going to be a yearly best performance for them in one of these master events. I think that's kind of cool.
That is very cool. I feel like all of these guys in the lower bracket also have eventually is going to be the one Protoss carrying the torch, Like you stack the bracket, hoping to be the one to carry through and actually get a Protoss into those finals, which hasn't happened for a while, with Clem, Cyril, and Raynor just dominating all the time. But it feels like one of these newbies, the quote-unquote newbies, the not Showtime, the not Hearthstone, the not Mana, It feels like they're going to get closer to being that 4th guy up there in the top 4 of Europe.
Yeah. I know I'm supposed to say Goblin, but I like Skillers, man. I'm still a big believer. I think that kid is getting better each and every single Premier event, and I love the motivation that Skillers is carrying around. Just feels like a very positive vibe around that young man. And I feel like he's got great friends as well that help him. I think the Russian scene and the Ukrainians are all pretty close with each other, so they help each other improve as well. And if I look at Hellraiser, I'm just like, damn, like you actually got a lot better as well. Because Hellraiser used to just be like, yeah, he's difficult. You don't really want to run into Hellraiser, but if one of the tough guys did have to face him, it was going to be all right. Now all of a sudden I'm like, damn, Hellraiser truly is a force to be reckoned with in this tournament.
Absolutely. Not just in PvP, but kind of talking about mostly is PvP. That's what we're casting. That's what we'll be playing for probably the rest of the bracket, but also because it is just looking so damn good. Fake Oracle comes in. Hellraiser does not fall for it whatsoever, but the fake Oracle scouts the very real Oracle coming out of the real Stargate from Hellraiser. Shield battery is prepared, just got to move his units into the defensive position.
Yep. That is obviously what GunGFu is going to do. He's got so many probes in his main base. He's going full, damn it, what's the name again?
Alpha Star?
Alpha Star, there we go. He's going full Alpha Star on us. But he should be able to transfer at least 6 now, if not 8. And I think this game will just start going. I do always like having an Oracle out on the map. I mean, personally, I'm terrible with Oracles, but I see the strength and potential of just having an Oracle out there. The days where it's like, oh, if I open Oracle, I really want to kill at least 7 probes. I really don't think that matters that much. Now, if you go double Oracle, you're clearly hoping for damage. But as long as they are alive, they make life very tough for your opponent because nobody wants to attack while leaving like 6 Stalkers at home. So if you have 2 Oracles out, you know that you're pretty damn safe and sound on your side of the map.
Kind of took the words out of my mouth. Like, usually I do like the single Oracle opener just for the utility it provides. I think it can be very strong just as an opener. But yeah, the 2, all right, you're going to want some damage done. You're going to want to definitely distract and keep your opponent at home. And I guess that's what Hellraiser is thinking of for now. We'll see what he follows up with. Can actually go after a Stalker. You don't see that too often with Oracles.
No, and there was a shield battery nearby as well, so that kind of felt like a waste of energy. Now, obviously, since he went double Oracle, they already gathered up quite a bit of energy, so maybe if GunGFu is not paying attention, you're able to get those extra ticks off, and then you will be able to pick up a Stalker, but that was kind of an odd exchange. You don't normally see that.
I mean, how do you think about Hellraiser's follow-up, though? I mean, sometimes you see a Stargate, one Oracle, right into a Twilight Council, so Blink actually is not that far off. Even the Forge can be caught up with. But this was a very big delay, not just because of the second Oracle, but also Immortal production. So that +1 is not so far off, but the Twilight Council tech certainly is.
It makes me feel like he doesn't want to go Blink this time, even though we know he loves Blink, and normally he always goes Blink, but he indeed goes Charge. So I think he's just going to hit a devastating timing attack with Zealots, Archons. This is actually kind of cool, just to switch it up. Because if you're GunGFu right now, you might be like, oh, you know, if he wants to just go do the same thing as he always does, then I think I'm in a really good spot, because you open up Oracles, they haven't really done that much. But if GunGFu just sits at home with like 6 to 8 or 10 Blink Stalkers, and all of a sudden an army of Zealots, Immortals, and Archons knocks on his front door, I don't see a way to hold this. Like, I think GunGFu is playing too much autopilot right now, while Hellraiser is ready to hit a devastating attack.
Exactly. And not just because, you know, that's what he's expecting, but, you know, and he's not scouting. He is scouting, actually. And I feel like what is happening is that he's scouted and is just, as you said, autopiloting. When if this was a year ago or 2 years ago, you're like, oh, he's going to 2-base attack me with this composition. This used to be the composition, used to be the thing to do. And maybe now he's reminding himself as he gets a second scout in there and sees the army also move out, but is it already too late? He's invested so many resources and things that aren't really going to help him. The robotics bay, the +2 won't be done. And Stalkers, they do much worse when they're pinned back into a corner.
Yep, these Stalkers, they should have been out on the map. They should have been activating the barriers on those Immortals. Maybe put some pressure on the War Prism. I have no idea how GunGFu thinks he's going to hold this base. Normally, I'd say you don't want to attack into a shield battery, but right now it's absolutely okay. And the Oracles are still alive as well, so the Oracles can sweep into the natural. I actually think this is going to be a very convincing W for Hellraiser, and this is honestly a strategic victory. Very well done. A bit lazy on the side of GunGFu, who's obviously going to do his best here, but how do you hold this?
You give up your third, I guess, and then try and get to a decent number of disruptors. Recalls the probes, so that's exactly what he's thinking. One disruptor is going to try, because that's the thing about this composition, is that at least your disruptor is safe, so you can even kind of be aggressive with it. Pops the 2 Immortal Shields, is a lot of damage, but the Zealot number is still very bothersome. They are going to push the Stalkers back, but can Hellraiser just say that that's what he wanted and actually move on? He's got his own third Nexus up, producing probes. He should have his own +2, although GunGFu is getting a Warp Prism, maybe looking for some revenge.
GunGFu wants to get on top of an Immortal, and he does. I actually feel that Hellraiser should have just kept fighting. I don't really see the point in running at home. Like, even if he would have kind of ran out of steam eventually, I think he would have taken out a lot of Stalkers and a couple of additional probes as well. Now things are going to be a bit awkward, and I think the most important thing for GunGFu here is try to snipe those Phoenixes. I think if you can just keep the Phoenix count low, Hellraiser is going to get kind of a taste of his own recipe, where he's going to have to chase units that he can't really catch. And that's going to be very frustrating.
It's kind of an interesting turnaround. I mean, that seemed catastrophic, and perhaps you're right. If he had continued moving forward, it would have been the W for Hellraiser. But with the pullback and GunGFu immediately having the confidence to chase after and say, well, okay, yeah, I do have the advantage now, is going to be able to control the Phoenixes. Because if he had been passive and been like, oh, okay, is my opponent going to attack me or not, then Hellraiser does get up to like 8 Phoenix or whatever. Like, suddenly those Stalkers are risking their lives whenever they go out on the map. But if they can keep the count low, it's not as much of a risk. They can actually escape, they can focus fire, and they can control the game like you would want when you have Blink Stalkers.
Yeah, during that attack, I also think Hellraiser was maybe a bit reckless with the Oracles. I feel like he should have just always fought against the smaller army, but what he did instead was not really fight, lose the Oracles, then GunGFu could use all of his units in one place, and then actually kind of feel like he had enough micro potential and kiting potential in his army that he could go for it. The Phoenixes are going to swoop in from the left side though, and they're going to lift 4 Stalkers immediately. I love that choice by Hellraiser, very well done. I mean, GunGFu kind of salvaged the situation with the previous attack, but he's still in a world of trouble.
Even just 4 Phoenix taking out 4 Stalkers from the equation, I mean, was a very big deal. And that's he's going to continue, I guess, investing into them, but still mostly going for the charge with Archon. He's not making any plans to transition. In fact, just planning on attacking once again. GunGFu will have +3. He might have a couple of disruptors, but that's the other utility of the Phoenix. You get just enough to make sure you can lift the disruptors, and all you need is to lift them, and that cancels the shot. So one preemptive shot, actually going to try and get some Zealots, just barely able to run away in time. That is one of 2 disruptors. I like that he was kind of hiding one. The poor prison was on purpose, but
Zealots in the main at this point, and that's a lot of Zealots. I think 4 Zealots got dropped, and Hellraiser is casually wiped in 10 more. At this point, he's got like 31 Zealots out on the map, and GunGFu is going to need the absolute best disrupt the hits of his life. What he doesn't need is that pylon, for instance, to go down, because he really needs to start spending his money as well. It is possible. Like, there is still some micro potential in the army of GunGFu. It's just that he's got way less Zealots than Hellraiser does.
Those Zealots are now in the natural, forcing him to engage on top of the Archon Immortal army outside of his base. He's got 2 Disruptors, but I don't think they're really getting the great shots. One got a decent shot, but he still can't really commit. He's going to need both of them to get good shots. One of them's going to get a shot. Not exactly great. The other one, much worse. 14 probes going down. If GunGFu could actually clean this entire army up, I'd feel okay for him, but Hellraiser's not even going to give him the opportunity. He's going to run away again. So GunGFu, I mean, 3 Nexus, maybe can make a comeback happen.
What he kind of just did once again there is survive. And it's just like nothing really going for him, other than the fact that he is the player with the 2 Disruptors out. And does he still have his Robo Bay? Yes, he didn't lose any important tech structures there, so it could have been a lot worse. He's only down 5 workers. He does have +3. But it does still feel that all the momentum is on the side of Hellraiser. I do gotta say though, I fight armies with a ridiculous amount of Archons, and that is kind of what Hellraiser's army is right now. A little bit clumsy. And then the supplies can be a bit deceiving as well, right? Because I feel like 3-4 Archons is super nice. Sometimes even 5 or 6, but whether you have 5 or 8 or 9, if you're going up against Disruptors and you have mass Archons, it doesn't really matter because your Archons will never fight all at the same time anyway.
That's an interesting perspective. I mean, it's not one we usually talk about because, you know, the mass Archon versus a decent number of Disruptors, it's usually, that's not the dynamic. It's usually Disrupted to Disruptor. GunGFu is even adding on Colossus now. I mean, he could have tried to just, like, overproduce Disruptors and hope that enough shots get out despite Phoenix liftoffs, despite the number of Archons that are available, but trying to add in that consistent damage. The lifts are too good, so I don't think any of those shots went down. And if the shots don't go down, then GunGFu just loses. GG.
GG. Hellraiser gets a convincing W in the end, and he honestly played very solid from start to finish. I felt there was more potential in his first push, but he kind of went for the good old when ahead, get further ahead approach and never really got carried away. He's like, no, this is fine, this is fine. I like how everything is going, and he still gets a good win in the end. So he now takes the 2-0 lead. We're going to head to a very quick break, and after that, we'll be back with Game 3 between Hellraiser and GunGFu.
We're heading into game 3 on Romanticide with Hellraiser up 2-0. So GunGFu's last chance, his last chance to take in a map, his last chance in this tournament, as it is the lower bracket. And I really don't want to see him go out like this, Roddy.
No, I would love to see a little more, especially because GunGFu actually did have a good season, and he even made a tweet after like 4 or 5 play days that he was a bit sad that he didn't play too many games on the mainstream. So now we have him here for a best of 5. I think it's safe to say we just want to see a little more because he deserves it as well.
On the top left, the sky is looking very good in this matchup. It is the blue Protoss Hellraiser.
And in the bottom right side, we're looking at the main base of our German Protoss player. He needs to turn things around. It is GunGFuBanDa.
I do think that Hellraiser has played this best of 5 already like quite nicely. The first game was more of that, just like, oh, well, I guess that style does work. All right, then. Okay. But the second game was, as you put it, all strategic. That was just a severe change-up. Not just for what the current meta is of PvP, but also for what you would expect specifically from Hellraiser.
No, I'm totally with you. I loved it. Everything kind of made sense. I do think he still could have done things a bit better with the first attack because he kind of lost the oracles without getting anything out of them. Well, if he would have kept them alive a bit longer, or he would have sent them in while he was truly fighting with his main army, I think he will always get a phenomenal trade because there was no firepower in the army of GunGFu. But for everything that Hellraiser did fantastic in game 2, I do think we caught GunGFu sleeping a little bit, right? He was just kind of doing his thing, building some probes, sending a little Phoenixy in here and there, and he's like, oh, I'm not taking damage against these oracles. This is all going fantastic. Well, wrong, because your opponent's building up a strong, powerful army that's ready to fight, and he saw it way too late.
And recognized it way too late. I mean, the presence of the Immortals, like, okay, that does happen. That actually did happen in the first game. Hellraiser bothered to get a bit of a faster Robo, and then went for an Immortal. But it was such a late Twilight Council that I feel like if he was really thinking of that possibility, if he had played that all in, that 2-base attack on ladder just an hour ago, he would have been like, oh, is it this? Like, hold on. But it probably was just out of his mind completely that it would be a 2-base committed attack as well with that faster charge.
And it's very easy, I think, as a player to get tunnel vision when you know that your opponent is very good at a certain thing. You start overthinking it and making it more complicated in your head as well. You're like, maybe I should do this. And even though you're playing a new game, a brand new game, and there's even a Stargate, you're still just worried. It's like, what should I do better in those base trade scenarios, right? Like you're thinking of 4-base, 5-base scenarios. How do I set myself up stronger defensively? And then all of a sudden you actually forget like some of the basic fundamentals. Like, wait a minute. This Twilight was super late. I didn't see that many probes. He didn't do any damage. Like, how is he okay with this game? And it's like, well, now it's too late. But yeah, mistakes happen.
Well, Hellraiser's starting off with another Stargate opener, which I really, this would have been the biggest surprise to do what he did last game on this map. Like that, Romanticide is where it seems Hellraiser has the most fun with his style of just mass gateway units and linking back and expanding aggressively. Romanticide's quite a large map, just very, very wide. And I think that makes it extra difficult for people to actually punish him when he slips up and, maybe is a bit over-aggressive.
This is going to be bad for GunGFu if he doesn't get out of here immediately. I've been here many times, Zombie Grub, and let me tell you, 4 Stalkers against 4 Stalkers, but then you run up a ramp. It's a fight you don't win. I've tried and tried and tried, but it turns out that if your opponent shoots first, they do better in these fights. But GunGFu is aware of this, so he made the correct decision to just disengage.
What I'd like to see, I think from GunGFu, because again, I feel like Hellraiser does want to get up a 3-4 base situation, and he's usually pretty protective of that situation too. But anyways, I would not mind seeing from GunGFu something aggressive, like putting on that pylon in a proxy gateway, and just like really powering on the Blink Stalkers, as opposed to trying to play into the disruptors. There is definitely a moment where you can be producing more and get, bit faster gateways, and then just go hard while they're kind of getting probes or getting technology, and you can hit pretty hard there. But I'm not sure GunGFu is the one that's going to be, aggressive. He seemed so eager to play that first game out like he did, and you could even say he was doing a great job of it too. So maybe he's evaluating that first game and being like, if only I hadn't slipped up only I had, done X or Y, I could have been fine. Because he was kind of winning after the flub that was that third base attack.
Yes. Sorry, I was giggling at this chat. It was like M Naus, and then our observer was like M Naus, and I was thinking, I was like, that's German for my mouse, but obviously it was just a typo. But I thought that was really funny. Anyways, Hellraiser is gonna be pretty serious about the aggression this time. If GungFu leaves too many units in his main, this can get a little bit dicey as well. I love that he's going for the battery. I think that is absolutely the right target. Saves the Oracle as well. I think there is some potential here for Hellraiser.
I mean, it was kind of a cool idea. You don't really expect an aggressive attack with the Oracles coming in PvP. I mean, maybe this is a PvC or PvT, but gets a couple of probes and does get a lead in the probes, but yeah, not actually going to commit any further there. So GungFu is going to have a shield battery. Of course, it's natural, maybe a bit scared, like, well, okay, you can attack me, but GungFu will have, at the very least here, a much faster +1. Links pretty close together.
Phenomenal trade though in the end. I mean, 1 adept went down against 4 probes and 2 sentries as well. I think that's beautiful if you Hellraiser. With both Oracles still alive, you're going to be more than satisfied with that. What I really loved is that he immediately went for the shield battery. I feel so many Protoss players are still like, oh, let's just take the fight. And it's like, okay, it's almost out of energy. Like, oh my god, it's getting overcharged. It's like, you don't take those fights. If the armies are that small, you cannot take a fight near a battery. Hellraiser clearly acknowledged that. And he's like, I'm going to take out the battery first, then I'll get the sentries. And then when all of your units are taking this very serious and are on the low ground, I'll send the Oracles into the main. I really love that attack. Very well done.
I'm interested to see where this, I guess, difference in the build orders goes to. We got a faster robo for GungFu, and Hellraiser still no robo whatsoever, adding on gateways first. If Hellraiser has a probe out in the map, and he does, I'm gonna be like, oh, he's gonna do what I said I want GungFu to do, which I guess could be unfortunate for GungFu depending on if he sniffs it out or not. But yeah, you just you power up on the Blink Stalkers. You get an extra gateway and proxy. You don't have to actually have a robo or Warp Prism, which is quite an extra investment. And it can just be a surprise because, they're thinking like, oh, it's going to be more of a macro game. It's going to be maybe even to Disruptors. And perhaps that is what GungFu is even going to do. But right now, just crawling out Immortals is what I would like to see. Has he actually figured this out?
I don't know if he has it figured out, but he definitely seems to be worried about something, because he is doing exactly what you just said, and that is Chrono Boost out Immortals. And normally you wouldn't do that randomly. If you feel like this is going to be a super long game, I think you'd rather Chrono Boost out a plus. He does start +2. That's a little bit ambitious. There is a probe right now of GungFu that did see all of this. So I think at this point, don't be greedy. Build another shield battery. That's exactly what he does. I actually think that he can hold. I love the fact that he built a cannon in his main mineral line as well, so he can even bring back those 3 stalkers he left behind. I like this on paper for GungFu.
Hellraiser has started off games like this before, and then because he is so eager to play into just pure gateways, he managed to make it work out, even when we start talking about, like, oh, technology, disadvantages, and even worker disadvantages, which Hellraiser is not at an economic disadvantage. In fact, being the one fast to get a 4th base is right in line with what we would expect. Is it great when this just wins, when it just finds someone not producing units? Yeah, of course. But for Hellraiser, it's like a Maru 2 Rocks. He just gets control of the game and then plays from there. And it's up to GungFu to react perfectly.
Good move there by Hellraiser, at least getting 4 probes, not losing any Oracles, but I'm definitely with you. I feel like most Protoss players, if they were in Hellraiser their position, they'd be, I'm a little more comfortable now. But he knows that he's been here time and time again. You gotta get a robo eventually though, because I feel like the majority of the power of the build and the movement is having vision. You can't truly rely on just those 2 Oracles to give you vision, right?
You wouldn't think so, but if they die, well, especially if they die, but if they don't die, then I guess more power to him. I mean, he has gone for some pretty late robos in the past, finally slaps one down, and I do suspect that'll just go right into the Observer production, but he might have only slapped that down because he saw a Dark Shrine.
Yeah, but one way or the other, he's gonna need it. Because it's impossible to make great army movement with Zealots and Stalkers if you just don't ever have any Observers. It's so nice to peek over a ramp. It's so good to just have maybe an Observer in surveillance mode somewhere and know that there is a spot of the map where you can go to. Vision is everything when you play these kinds of strategies, like the one Hellraiser is planning to do once again. So, he was these 4, so I'd love to see him get a Robo Bay immediately. for observer speed. Like, I don't even care if he makes a Disruptor or a Colossus. I want to see him get observer speed.
That'd be the new meta, man. Well, he doesn't know about the Dark Shrine. He definitely was wrong about that, but it's PvP, so he knows there's going to be a Dark Shrine at some point. And you're right, you're spot on. Talk about how much it is about vision. Like, one of the most frustrating things is that Hellraiser has been very good about picking off observers and forcing the defending player to even add on like pylons that they know they're going to lose, or stalkers out in the wilderness trying to get any form of scouting because they can't reliably have their own observers out, especially when they are not playing his same style. If they're trying to build disruptors or even Colossus, like we saw from Geralt, there's no room for observers. So I do suspect we're going to see some of those. Actually, a Phoenix popping out to take care of a Warp Prism. And then all eyes on the front attack, or at least delaying GunGFu's fourth base.
Yeah, that's very nice. I totally forgot about the fact that Hellraiser did open up in the Stargate and still has those 2 oracles out as well that are dropping stasis traps. And that's very nice, not having that headache of that prism that's lurking around and could potentially warp in Zealots or DTs in your main. I like that GunGFu indeed went for a lot of sentries this game. Even after he lost a couple, he rebuilt them. So he's indeed just kind of like, no, I'm going to turtle up on this army. But at the same time, he doesn't have the most stocky army. This is not the kind of Protoss that's turtling to carry us, right? There is still some mobility in the army of GunGFu.
And as he gets his fourth base actually made and used, he will have a pretty powerful run-by opportunity, similar to what Hellraiser will eventually do himself. This actually being surprisingly powerful, only 1 cannon as opposed to a cannon and a shield battery is not what you would actually expect. Just around 4-base saturation, the Protoss players, or 3-base, sorry, they just put down both or even more. I'm just kind of going to die here. But that Colossus choice, what we've seen from a couple different Protoss players against what Hellraiser does, I really can't fault it. Like, I think through it and I'm like, okay, it makes sense for a couple different reasons. But honestly, whenever we see it, it doesn't seem to actually help out as much as you would expect. So GunGFu, I'm afraid that he has the same just ideas as what we saw from Geralt on this map against the Hellraiser doing exactly this, and we know how that eventually ended. It took 30 minutes, and eventually ended in Hellraiser's favor.
Well, Hellraiser is going to do what he does best, but GunGFu should be more than ready. I really like the amount of static defenses. I think the nice thing about having that Colossus in the mix is not only that obviously it's great against all the Zealots, we can maybe save that with Nexus, Overcharge, Super Battery for the win! Yes, indeed. Well done. I love that decision making by GunGFu. Super smart.
Oh, that was requiring some fast decision making, man. That was a great save, but it is still ultimately a weak Nexus, and Hellraiser is going to be adding on DTs with Blink in the future. He's already got a Warp Prism set up for the right side. He is totally prepared to be where exactly GunGFu is not. He's adding on all those observers we were talking about, and GunGFu is adding on other robo units. So that lack of vision, it's what seems to be even most important. Yes, GunGFu is going to have theoretically this fantastic army that is not something you can blink on top of at all. But if he gets pulled apart, then eventually you can blink on top of it.
To go back to the Colossi real quick, what I like about it is that obviously it's good against Zealots. I think everybody is aware of that. But since there are still so many sentries in the mix, it's actually very nice that you have the ability to break force fields, but your opponent doesn't. So he can drop a couple force fields, but if he then wants to chase, it's a lot easier when you actually have a unit in your army that can break the force fields.
That was GunGFu's only observer, I think. I just went over it in terms of like map presence, but he also needs to recall it to the main, as there was only a single cannon. So a lot of havoc in the main base, even the Colossus getting awfully low. Also, I guess a little bit of harassment, so it's not that GunGFu's not getting something done on the other side of the map. In fact, GunGFu gets a killed Nexus, while Hellraiser is, I guess, focusing on the attack of his own. But you know what? Hellraiser's attack ain't stopping.
No.
Just gonna keep on going, keep on warping in.
Yeah, all of a sudden there's an army in the main base of GunGFu. I guess that's the beauty of being on 13 gateways. At the same time, Hellraiser is going for that Nexus he left before that he took quite a bit of damage on. He's got so many stalkers. This is such a bizarre way to play. GunGFu has brought the majority of his army right now. I mean, that Nexus is always going to die. I don't like that warp in by Hellraiser. I kind of
Well, I mean, he sees there's no observer, right? But there is one about to pop out. I don't know if he can snipe it with the stalkers that are remaining in the main base, but he's probably going to try. The observer is there. Does he see it? The DTs might actually be just what he needed anyways. Observer be damned. The DT power here actually taking out the Zealots. Disruptor shot is not going to happen. Whoa, that was close.
Okay.
But man, I can't believe this is continuing on.
That warp in was genius. I was like, it feels like that's just gonna get cleaned up. Well, turns out that is not the case. Kind of unsaid for GunGfu as well that his shields are not finishing up. Finally, we're gonna get a few more units, and that should do the trick here. Don't lose both observers, please.
Oh my god.
He does lose both. He has no observers left.
No, he doesn't.
Zero
and it's only on one robo. Oh, this one BT is going to cause some serious havoc. I mean, Hellraiser might not find other opportunities. Thankfully, the War Prism was sniped by GunGfu, right?
He's on 0 robos, by the way, because he lost the robo.
Yeah, exactly. That's why he only had one robo and he lost it. Okay. So he's going to replace it now with 2. But the good news is, as I was saying, Hellraiser couldn't find any other opportunity to send DPs in. There is static defense elsewhere on the map.
I mean, shout out to Fear Dragon once again, because the DT strike really made a big difference there, right? If those Dark Templars would have just wiggled their way into that battle, you'd be like, yeah, they might get a couple swipes off. But the fact that it was a nice mix between Zealots that are obviously a bit tanky, DTs blinking on top of the remaining units of GunGfu, and still a few Stalkers in the back line, actually made that final warp in so complicated to deal with. And all of a sudden, Hellraiser just got so much damage done. It's insane, Jess. He just keeps on making it happen with this style over and over and over again.
So one of those styles I wouldn't really want to try at home to win, but I would try at home because it seems like it'd be a lot of fun. I would absolutely die with it, but he actually makes it work. He looks like it is the best thing to do. He makes Disruptors look like it was, silly for us to think that was actually going to dominate the PvP matchup. I mean, we're not quite there yet. There's a lot more Protosses. We're going to have plenty of opportunity to study Hellraiser's style and what, failed on the defender's part, but it's looking good so far. It's certainly looking good in this game, and all I need to do is win this to move on and face more of those Protoss players. And by having destroyed GunGfu's main base, it already looks so promising.
Yep, 2 armies on the top right side were actually getting very close to each other, but that was not a fight that GunGfu was ever going to win, so it's good to see that he disengaged there. Our German Protoss is in trouble. If GunGfu loses this map, he will be eliminated from the DreamHack SC2 Masters Winter. It is a top 2 finish for the first time in this year, but I think he expected a little more of this series, and an 0-3 defeat. Should be able to kill the first Disruptor, and he does. He avoids the second Nova as well, so this fight is not going bad for GunGfu.
Not at all. In fact, he's going to try and take the momentum, run with it, chase after the army a little bit. But then, of course, Hellraiser's always got a second army somewhere. Disruptor's going to pop out, could help, and it looks like the Observer's going to be taken out by the cannon. Actually, not quite. This is once again going to do a lot of damage. Meanwhile, GunGfu on top of Hellraiser's 4th base is finally clearing up the stack defense over there. So a little bit of tit-for-tat, but I mean, Hellraiser's one with more bases, and a lot more banks, so he can give up this base.
Yep. And GunGfu actually loses a lot of probes in all of this as well, right? Just 15 going down while only killing 3 probes on the other side of the map. The Nexus goes down as well. I mean, compare this amount of damage to what GunGfu achieved on the other side of the map. 3 probes and a bunch of static defenses going down. Hellraiser just handled that situation a lot better than GunGfu did.
GunGfu's not going to give up on the harassment. He would manage to get not just the 4th base up, but also the 5th behind it. I mean, it does seem kind of like a 2-for-1 deal most of the time, but very important that he got it, as he needs the extra minerals. His natural has been killed. His main's been dead for a while, and his 3rd is starting to mine out. Lots of observers going across the map as GunGfu thinks he's got an opportunity. His army supply looking better than his opponent thanks to having 40 less workers. That makes sense. And his army type is also something that is truly fearsome if Hellraiser doesn't have room to maneuver.
Yep. Hellraiser going to be forced to sacrifice this base. No! Oh my goodness, Hellraiser with the flanking Disruptor from the bottom. I have no idea where that Disruptor came from. I saw a Nova flying in. I was like, what? Did GunGfu just send that into his own army? But it was Hellraiser with the flanking Disruptor. He just killed 5 or something. Amazing.
That actually didn't compute for a while. I was like, well, Disruptors don't kill their own Disruptors. What happened? That was really amazing from Hellraiser. I mean, again, just whether or not he has map vision, it always seems like he knows where the army is specifically and then can place other things around to take advantage of it. GunGfu definitely shined back after that fight. Gonna try and build up his Disruptor count again, going up to 5, but only 3 in the front line as Hellraiser moves in. Armor supplies have evened up and actually even in favor of Hellraiser, as well as having better upgrades. He's got that actual armor. He's gonna once again almost grab every single observer. Not quite. GunGfu's actually the one taking that out. Gonna find a Disruptor on the pathway as well. Turned that into something good there for GunGfu.
Yep. Obviously, he's going to need a few more W's on the board to really get back into this match. It's going to be so demoralizing if you're going for, because every single time you feel like a game is going all right, something seems to happen that all of a sudden turns it upside down, right? It's like, wow, he's got some momentum going with this push. He takes out that Nexus. Now he can take out the one on the left side as well. And he's still going for that, but the fact that he lost so many of his key units to one flanking disruptor of Hellraiser, that's got to sting.
He's also kind of running out of shots on his disruptors. I mean, 6 is a pretty good count to have continuous shots, but yeah, Hellraiser's been pretty good about counting them in the past. He's also once again got multiple engagements. DT Stride really coming in play here to take out the stack defense. Disruptor shot from GunGfu grabs a good portion of Hellraiser's Stalkers, so now we can also try and defend that Nexus, but it's going to go down way too many units. The shield battery was not going to be able to help out. At the same time, GunGfu able to demolish the left side base of Hellraiser. It's a bit more back and forth yet still, especially since GunGfu has that bottom left, not just up and running now with probes, but even some stack defense.
Yeah, that's very well done indeed by GunGfu. I just looked at the bank of Hellraiser. At one point, he had 7.2k, and he's expanding everywhere. I was like, I know you played more Brood War than me in my life, but it's like, I'm starting to get some Brood War vibes. Everybody that always loved Brood War and hated certain things about StarCraft is like, you guys gotta love the way that this man is playing StarCraft then, because he is just staking bases, building workers, and spamming units like a madman. And he always seems to be on the right end of it.
Not sure they're such a big fans of the disruptor play, but you know what? Hellraiser isn't either. Hellraiser doesn't care about disruptors. He plays around them. Well, except that one that got 5. That was pretty good. But otherwise, he doesn't really make disruptors.
Yeah, 34 Stalkers, 8 Dark Templars with Blink as well. GunGfu is like, well, what if I just make sure that he doesn't get the base at 9 o'clock? I keep my bottom left side safe, and then I try to get the base up near the Rich Vespian gas again. And maybe it is a playable game. He's going to use Recall, Overcharge being used as well. It's kind of a funny Recall. It's a very tiny army. Do we have any flanking disruptors? Like, this is where you should send that army to the top. Come on, GunGfu. This is where they should go through the right side over that little bridge. I feel like that's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, it is, but he was also being distracted, I think, at that third base. He had to warp in to try and help out, but the warp in wasn't strong enough, and now he's losing on his production. He's going to lose his probes. He's going to straight up lose his gateways, not only being depowered. And that, forces an error in GunGfu. Maybe he had an opportunity, maybe he didn't, but then he also just has to pull back and loses another observer.
We have a big army fight on the left side. All of the Novas go forward at once, and maybe 1 or 2 are going to be good. Good job there by GunGfu in the end. No, don't kill your own Stalkers now, and he doesn't. Kills a whole bunch of observers. I mean, with only 900 gas in the bank, Hellraiser does have to be a little bit careful, but he can still build 40 Zealots before he's truly in trouble.
I love how many observers have died in this game, but it's still 7-3. Right? They're so eager to keep track of their observers. Yeah, 10 in total for GunGfu. So, he's lost his third Nexus. He lost a couple of gateways. His entire main 3-base setup, where there still is technology and there still is production, is looking awfully weak. It looks like eventually it's going to be broken by one of these DT Zealot run-bys. In fact, this one looking pretty strong as Hellraiser distracts on the left with the majority of the army. It's like the real battle is going to be on the right side.
Well, the Dark Templars will blink forward immediately and force these Stalks to disengage. If I was GunGfu, I would chill for a split second, mate. You've got 1,800 minerals in the bank. Try to repower those gates, get those gateways up, and get an army. Because if he would spend all his money, then these armies are actually very evenly matched. And maybe I would even favor GunGfu's army a little bit, because he still does have more disruptors.
Just waiting on more reinforcements for his gateways to finish up. A couple disruptors is enough to zone out Hellraiser's army, so GunGfu's going to grab this Nexus once again. Okay, spoke too soon. But really? No?
Fire!
Okay.
Fire!
Oh, yeah, I was like, no, we're not in your own army! That one's going to be a bit better. That one's going to be fantastic. And GunGfu does have the retreat of, I guess, the static defense. He's still got detection, but the DTs actually might try and go for the disruptors. They do, in fact, going to grab the Immortals as well. GunGfu trying to reinforce. The armor supply is still holding fairly strong as long as observers are available, and GunGfu will actually even pounce back, chase after the army, but it's a bit deceiving. Hellraiser's army is still stronger here.
Yep, Hellraiser still has so many Zealots and obviously can wipe in a lot of units as well. I feel like it took a long time for those reinforcements to show up for GunGfu. Does snipe another observer, gets the cannon. No, go and kill the cannon. Oh my goodness. Loses 4 Dark Templars and doesn't kill the cannon. Oh, that's a painful misclick.
Yeah, lost so many. I mean, there's still so many observers, and he was very quick to rebuild them and sending them across the map, but at least they would have contributed a bit more. Hellraiser now up 20 supply, but also has superior upgrades his entire game. He's actually up 4 upgrades in total, which is kind of insane. So when it comes down to the Zealot stalker fights, it is very one-sided. No Immortals, no Archons, no Disruptors. GunGfu at half the supply of his opponent, I'm afraid is not going to get any maps today.
Hellraiser is sick. Well, an absolute sicko. As he's just kind of cornering GunGfu right now over here in the bottom left side. At the same time, still units active on the right as well. Final base is gonna go down. Congrats